The Galactic Empire thought they won. Until the Diplomat whispered, Rule number 1. The massive Zephyrian command ship, Dominion's edge hung in space like a predatory beast, its crystalline hull reflecting the dying light of Earth's burning cities below. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge, his 6 arms crossed in satisfaction as he watched the final human resistance crumble. The conquest had taken 3 standard cycles, far longer than anticipated for such a primitive species, but the outcome had never been in doubt. Status report, Kethvar commanded, his mandibles clicking with pleasure. Sir, all major population centers have surrendered. Human military forces have ceased organized resistance. The planet is ours, reported his tactical officer, a young Zephyrian whose excitement was barely contained. Kethvar nodded slowly. The humans had been surprisingly resilient. Their technology was laughably primitive compared to the Galactic Empire's advanced weaponry, but they had fought with a ferocity that had impressed even veteran commanders. Still, biology was destiny. The humans were soft, weak creatures who had barely mastered interstellar travel. They stood no chance against an empire that had conquered 1,000 worlds. The communication array crackled to life. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's coming from what appears to be their governmental complex in the city they call Washington. Put it through, Kethvar ordered. He was curious to hear what pathetic plea for mercy the human leaders would offer. The holographic display shimmered to life, revealing a surprisingly composed human male in what appeared to be formal attire. He was older, perhaps in his 6th decade, with graying hair and calm eyes that showed no trace of the fear Kethvar had expected to see. I'm Secretary of State James Morrison, the human said in accented but clear galactic standard. I formally request an audience with your commanding officer to discuss terms of surrender. Kethvar's mandibles twitched in amusement. I am Admiral Kethvar, Supreme Commander of the 47th Conquest Fleet. You will surrender unconditionally. Your species will serve the Galactic Empire as laborers and resource providers. This is not a negotiation. The human diplomat remained perfectly still for a moment, then did something unexpected. He smiled. It wasn't the expression of a broken creature begging for mercy, but something else entirely. Something that made Kethvar's primary nervous system twitch with unease. Admiral, with respect, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. We would like to formally surrender, yes, but according to Galactic Accords 847C, any newly conquered species has the right to negotiate terms of integration into the Empire. We invoke that right. Kethvar's tactical officer leaned forward. Sir, he's correct. The Accords do specify silence. Kethvar snupped. He turned back to the human. Very well. You have 1 standard hour to present yourself aboard this vessel. Bring no weapons, no technology. You come alone. Thank you, Admiral. I'll see you shortly. The transmission ended, and Kethvar stared at the empty holographic space where the human had been. Something about that creature's demeanor disturbed him. The human had spoken as if he held cards that Kethvar couldn't see. 57 minutes later, a small human transport vessel docked with the Dominion's edge. James Morrison emerged wearing the same formal attire, carrying only a simple briefcase. Zephyrian guards escorted him through the ship's corridors, their plasma rifles trained on him at all times. The human walked with unhurried steps, occasionally glancing at the advanced technology around him with what appeared to be academic interest rather than intimidation. When they passed the ship's primary reactor core, visible through reinforced transparent aluminum, Morrison paused. Impressive, he said to one of the guards. Antimatter containment field, I assume? Very elegant design. The guard said nothing, but Kethvar, monitoring through security feeds, felt another twitch of unease. How had this primitive creature recognized advanced reactor technology? Morrison was brought to the main conference chamber, a vast room designed to intimidate with its soaring ceilings and the portraits of conquered worlds adorning the walls. Kethvar entered with his full command staff, their battle armor gleaming under the harsh lights. You stand before the representatives of an empire that spans 10,000 worlds, Kethvar announced. Your species is now property of the Galactic Empire. However, in recognition of your spirited resistance, we are prepared to offer your people positions as skilled laborers rather than simple manual workers. This is generous. Morrison opened his briefcase and withdrew a single document. Admiral, I appreciate your offer, but I'm afraid it's unacceptable. Several Zephyrian officers hissed in outrage, but Kethvar held up a hand for silence. Explain yourself, human. We accept your conquest of Earth, Admiral. We acknowledge the superiority of your military forces. However, humanity has something to offer the Galactic Empire that I don't believe you fully understand yet. And what might that be? Kethvar asked, his tone dripping with condescension. Morrison stood and walked to the chamber's main display screen. May I? Kethvar gestured impatiently. The human touched the interface, and suddenly the screen filled with data streams, star charts, and what appeared to be detailed tactical analyses. Kethvar's mandibles clicked in surprise. The human was accessing their secure networks with ease. For the past 3 cycles, while you've been conquering our world, we've been studying you, Morrison said calmly. Your technology, your military doctrine, your entire empire structure. We've identified 17 critical vulnerabilities in your command hierarchy, 43 exploitable weaknesses in your fleet formations, and 68 ways to disrupt your supply lines across your core territories. The room fell silent. Morrison turned back to face the Zephyrian command staff. You see, Admiral, humans have a particular talent that you've overlooked. We're very good at solving problems. Specifically, we excel at finding solutions that others consider impossible. Your empire has conquered through overwhelming technological superiority for so long that you've forgotten how to deal with adaptive thinking. Morrison pressed another control, and the display showed detailed schematics of Zephyrian ships, complete with highlighted weak points and suggested attack vectors. We know that your reactor cores can be destabilized by introducing quantum fluctuations at precisely 47.3 terahertz. We know that your communication networks can be crashed by transmitting a specific data packet that exploits a buffer overflow in your translation protocols. We know that your entire fleet relies on a centralized command structure that can be paralyzed by eliminating just 3 key vessels. Kethvar felt his blood cooling. You're bluffing. Your technology is primitive. You lack the capability to threaten our fleet. Morrison smiled again, that same unsettling expression. Admiral, I need to tell you about rule number 1. What are you talking about? Rule number 1 of dealing with humans, Morrison said quietly. Never assume we can't do something just because we haven't done it yet. The lights in the conference chamber suddenly dimmed. Emergency klaxons began wailing throughout the ship. Kethvar's tactical officer's face went pale as he stared at his instruments. Sir, we're detecting massive energy fluctuations in our reactor core. The containment field is destabilizing. And, sir, our entire communication network just went offline. We're completely cut off from the fleet. Morrison opened his briefcase again and withdrew a small device no larger than his palm. 3 hours ago, Admiral, we transmitted specific data packets to every ship in your fleet. Packets hidden inside routine surrender acknowledgments. Your own communication system delivered them for us. Kethvar stared at the device in horror. That's impossible. Our security protocols are designed to prevent attacks from species that think like Zephyrians, Morrison interrupted. They're quite ineffective against species that think like humans. Would you like to know what this device does? The Admiral's throat felt dry. Around the chamber, his officers were frantically working at their stations, trying to regain control of their ship's systems. This is a dead man's switch, Morrison explained conversationally. If my heart stops beating, or if this device is damaged, or if I don't transmit a specific code every 30 minutes, it sends a signal to 3,000 automated systems we've quietly deployed throughout your empire over the past several years. Deployed how? Kethvar whispered. Trade ships, Admiral. Merchant vessels. Refugees. Your empire is vast and complex, and you've grown complacent about internal security. It's amazing what you can accomplish with patience and a few hundred volunteers willing to spend years traveling slowly through Imperial space. Morrison walked back to his chair and sat down calmly. Those 3,000 systems are currently positioned at critical infrastructure points throughout your core territories. Power generation facilities, communication hubs, orbital shipyards, administrative centers. At my signal, they will simultaneously execute coordinated attacks that will effectively cripple your empire's ability to maintain control over its conquered territories. The conference chamber fell silent except for the distant sound of alarms. Kethvar's mind raced, trying to process what he was hearing. "You're telling me," the Admiral said slowly, "that while we were conquering your world, you were quietly infiltrating our entire empire?" "Not infiltrating, Admiral. That implies we were hiding. We were simply participating. Humans are remarkably good at adapting to new environments. Your empire is large enough that a few thousand humans with patience and technical skills could integrate quite easily into your economic systems, especially when they have 3 years to prepare and a very specific mission." Morrison stood again and walked to the view screen showing Earth below. Cities were still burning from the orbital bombardment. "Now, Admiral, let's discuss terms. Real terms." Kethvar's 6 arms trembled slightly as he processed the implications of what the human diplomat had just revealed. Around the conference chamber, his officers continued working frantically at their stations, but their expressions grew increasingly grim with each passing moment. "Status report," the Admiral commanded, though he dreaded the answer. "Sir, we've lost all external communications. The reactor containment field is holding for now, but the fluctuations are increasing. Engineering reports that if the pattern continues, we'll have a cascade failure within 6 hours," his chief engineer reported, her voice strained with barely controlled panic. "And the fleet?" "Unknown, sir. We can't reach them. For all we know, they're experiencing the same difficulties." Morrison remained seated, the small device resting casually in his palm. "Admiral, your people are experiencing what we call a logic bomb. It's a particularly human concept. Instead of brute force attacks, we prefer elegant solutions that turn an enemy's own systems against them. Your ship's computers are now executing code that gradually degrades critical systems while maintaining the appearance of normal operation until it's too late to reverse the damage." "You're monsters," whispered Kethvar's tactical officer. Morrison turned to face the young Zephyrian with an expression of mild curiosity. "Interesting perspective, Lieutenant. Would you say the same about your Admiral's bombardment of our civilian population centers? Or perhaps your Empire's standard practice of enslaving conquered species?" The lieutenant's mandibles clicked nervously, but he said nothing. "You see," Morrison continued, addressing the entire room, "humans have a saying, 'Don't start a fight you can't finish.' Your Empire has grown accustomed to overwhelming technological superiority being sufficient to guarantee victory. But technology is just tools, Admiral. Victory comes from how those tools are used." Morrison stood and walked to the large tactical display that dominated one wall of the conference chamber. With practiced ease, he interfaced with the Zephyrian systems, bringing up a real-time map of the local star cluster. "Your 47th Conquest fleet consists of 847 vessels spread across this system. Each ship is now experiencing cascading failures that will render them combat ineffective within the next 4 hours. However, the beauty of our approach is that your ships will remain structurally intact, and your crews will be unharmed. We're not interested in needless slaughter." Kethvar found his voice. "What do you want?" "An honest negotiation, Admiral. One where both sides acknowledge reality." Morrison manipulated the display, zooming in on the area around Earth. "Humanity recognizes that we cannot match your Empire's raw military power. We lack the industrial capacity, the territory, and the population to sustain a conventional war against an interstellar empire. We concede this point entirely." The human diplomat paused, allowing his words to sink in before continuing. "However, your empire has a problem that you haven't fully grasped yet. You've grown too large to govern effectively. 10,000 worlds, hundreds of thousands of star systems, billions upon billions of sentient beings from thousands of different species. The administrative complexity alone should be staggering, yet somehow you maintain control. How?" Morrison waited, but when no Zephyrian answered, he provided the answer himself. "Automated systems, artificial intelligence networks, predictive algorithms that manage resource distribution, coordinate military deployments, and maintain communication across impossible distances. Your empire functions because you've created a technological nervous system that thinks for you." The human smiled, that unsettling smile again. "And therein lies your vulnerability. Any system complex enough to manage an interstellar empire is complex enough to be hacked by someone who understands its underlying principles. Which brings us to humanity's first gift to the Galactic Empire." Morrison pressed a series of controls, and suddenly, the tactical display filled with scrolling code. But this wasn't Zephyrian programming. The syntax, the structure, the very logic of it was fundamentally different. 3 years ago, when your advanced scouts first visited our solar system, they made contact with our planetary government. But they also unknowingly interfaced with our global data networks. In that brief connection, human programmers began reverse engineering your technology. Not to steal it, Admiral, but to understand it. And once we understood it, the code on the screen suddenly shifted, reorganizing itself into more efficient patterns. System warnings began disappearing from various control stations around the chamber. We improved it. Morrison finished simply. Kethvar stared at the display in shock. You're telling me you've rewritten our ship's operating systems? Just optimizing them, Admiral. Your reactor core is now running 37% more efficiently. Your life support systems have reduced power consumption by 22%. Your navigation computers can now calculate hyperspace jumps 40% faster. We've made similar improvements to every system on this ship. The Admiral's chief engineer looked up from her station with an expression of amazement. Sir, he's right. All our efficiency readings have improved dramatically. But I don't understand how. Different perspective, Commander, Morrison interrupted gently. Zephyrian programming follows logical hierarchies based on your species' social structures. It's elegant but rigid. Human programming is more organic. We're comfortable with chaos, with systems that adapt and evolve rather than simply following predetermined patterns. Morrison walked back to the center of the chamber. Which brings us to humanity's second gift to the Empire, problem-solving methodology. Your species excels at perfecting existing solutions, but you struggle with paradigm shifts. Humans, by contrast, are natural lateral thinkers. We excel at finding unexpected solutions to seemingly impossible problems. You're proposing an alliance, Kethvar said slowly, beginning to understand. A partnership, Admiral. Earth accepts integration into the Galactic Empire. In exchange, humanity serves as the Empire's research and development arm. We solve the problems that traditional Zephyrian thinking can't address. We optimize systems that have grown stagnant. We provide the innovation that keeps an empire of 10,000 worlds functioning efficiently. Morrison gestured to the tactical display, which now showed detailed analyses of Imperial infrastructure across multiple star systems. For example, your empire currently loses approximately 15% of all interstellar cargo to pirates, equipment failure, and navigation errors. Human logistics experts have identified solutions that could reduce those losses to under 2%. Your military suffers from communication delays that can take hours or even days to relay information across large fleet formations. Human communication specialists have designed protocols that could reduce those delays to minutes. The human diplomat paused, allowing the implications to sink in. Your empire governs through force, Admiral. It's effective but inefficient. Fear is a powerful motivator, but it doesn't inspire innovation or loyalty. Human social scientists have developed governance models that could increase productivity across imperial territories by 400% while simultaneously reducing the resources required for enforcement. Kethvar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. And what guarantee do we have that humanity won't use these capabilities against the Empire? Morrison's expression grew serious. The same guarantee you had before this conversation began, Admiral. Mutual dependence. Your empire provides humanity with access to technologies, resources, and knowledge that we could never develop independently. We provide you with solutions to problems that threaten the long-term stability of imperial rule. The human walked to the large viewing window that looked out at Earth below. The planet still bore the scars of orbital bombardment, but already the lights of major cities were beginning to flicker back to life. But let me be absolutely clear about something, Admiral. The days of humanity as a conquered species are over. What I've demonstrated here today represents just a fraction of our capabilities. We've spent 3 years studying your empire while appearing to resist your conquest. Every battle we fought, every position we defended, every tactical decision we made was designed to give us additional information about your military doctrine and technological capabilities. Morrison turned back to face the Zephyrian command staff. We learned how to predict your ship movements by analyzing the electromagnetic signatures of your hyperspace engines. We learned how to interfere with your targeting systems by studying the frequency modulations of your sensor arrays. We learned how to compromise your secure communications by reverse engineering the encryption algorithms your advanced scouts used when they first contacted our governments. The room fell silent again. Finally, Kethvar spoke. You're saying that humanity allowed itself to be conquered? Not allowed, Admiral. We couldn't have prevented it with the resources available to us. But we made sure that our defeat served a larger strategic purpose. Rule number 1, remember? Never assume humans can't do something just because they haven't done it yet. Morrison activated his briefcase device again, and suddenly, the conference chamber's main display showed real-time feeds from locations across the Galactic Empire. Zephyrian military bases, industrial facilities, research stations, and administrative centers all operating normally, but with one crucial difference. In each location, the displays showed subtle indicators that human-designed systems were now running in the background. For 3 years, Admiral, every trade ship, every refugee convoy, every diplomatic mission that left Earth carried human observers. Not spies, not saboteurs, but researchers. They integrated into Imperial society, studied your systems from within, and quietly deployed improvements wherever they went. Morrison smiled. By the time your fleet arrived to conquer Earth, humanity had already become the Galactic Empire's most valuable strategic asset. You just didn't know it yet. Admiral Kethvar stood motionless for several long moments, his multiple eyes focused on the display showing Imperial facilities across the galaxy. The implications of what Morrison had revealed were staggering. The human diplomat waited patiently, apparently comfortable with the silence that had fallen over the conference chamber. Finally, Kethvar's tactical officer spoke up. Sir, if what he's saying is true, then humanity has already achieved strategic penetration of Imperial infrastructure on a scale that no enemy has ever accomplished. Not enemies, Lieutenant. Morrison corrected quietly. Partners. There's a crucial difference. Kethvar turned away from the display and fixed his primary eyes on the human. Explain to me how this partnership would function in practice. Morrison nodded and activated another series of controls. The tactical display shifted to show detailed organizational charts. The Galactic Empire's current administrative structure follows a traditional hierarchical model. The Imperial Council issues directives to sector governors, who relay commands to system administrators, who implement policies on individual worlds. It's a system designed for control, but not for efficiency. The display zoomed in on specific examples. Communication delays mean that problems identified on frontier worlds could take months or years to reach decision-makers at the Imperial Center. By the time solutions are implemented, the original problems have often evolved or multiplied. This creates a constant state of administrative lag that undermines Imperial effectiveness. Morrison manipulated the display to show an alternative organizational structure. Human management theory suggests a distributed decision-making model. Instead of centralized control, establish autonomous administrative units with standardized protocols, but local authority to adapt those protocols to specific circumstances. Maintain strategic oversight while enabling tactical flexibility. Kethvar's chief engineer studied the proposed structure with growing interest. This could work, but it would require fundamental changes to our communication networks and command protocols. Exactly, Morrison agreed. Which brings us to the technical aspects of the partnership. Human programmers have already developed the software frameworks necessary to implement such a system. Our communication specialists have designed protocols that can maintain secure Imperial authority while enabling rapid local response to emerging situations. The human diplomat walked to another control panel and brought up technical specifications that made several Zephyrian officers lean forward with interest. For example, current Imperial communication relays operate at 74% efficiency due to protocol overhead and encryption redundancy. Human design systems achieve 96% efficiency while maintaining superior security through quantum encryption methods that your current systems don't support. Kethvar's communications officer looked up from her station with excitement barely contained in her voice. Sir, if these specifications are accurate, we could establish real-time communication across the entire Imperial territory. No more delay between sector reports and central command response. Morrison nodded. That's just one example. Human innovation could revolutionize every aspect of Imperial operations, from resource extraction to population management to military coordination. But the key principle is collaboration, not domination. The Admiral walked to the large viewing window and stared down at Earth. The planet's surface still showed the aftermath of orbital bombardment, but he could see patterns of light that suggested rapid recovery efforts. What about resistance? Your species has just been conquered. Surely not all humans will accept integration into the Empire. Morrison's expression grew more serious. Admiral, I want to show you something that might help you understand humanity better. The human diplomat activated his communication device and spoke in what Kethvar recognized as the native human language called English. After a brief conversation, Morrison turned back to the Zephyrian command staff. I've just authorized the activation of emergency protocols on Earth. You're about to witness something that no other species in the Empire has ever demonstrated. The tactical display shifted to show orbital views of Earth's major population centers. Despite the recent bombardment, despite the ongoing invasion, despite 3 years of increasingly desperate warfare, humans were emerging from damaged buildings and underground shelters. But they weren't fleeing or cowering or surrendering randomly. They were organizing. Within hours, the display showed coordinated relief efforts spanning the entire planet. Damaged infrastructure was being rapidly assessed and repaired. Medical facilities were being established in areas where hospitals had been destroyed. Supply distribution networks were functioning despite the absence of central coordination. This is impossible, whispered Kethvar's tactical officer. There's no central command structure, no military organization. How are they coordinating such large-scale operations? Morrison smiled. Lieutenant, you're seeing the most fundamentally human characteristic, our ability to self-organize in crisis situations. Every human on that planet knows their role in emergency protocols that were developed over the past 3 years. They don't need orders from authority figures because they understand the plan and trust each other to execute their parts of it. The display zoomed in on specific locations, showing work crews repairing power generators, medical teams treating casualties, and communication specialists establishing new network nodes to replace destroyed infrastructure. Your empire rules through top-down authority, Morrison explained. Humans organize through distributed leadership. Every person below understands the strategic objectives and has the authority to make tactical decisions to achieve those objectives. It's more flexible, more adaptive, and more resilient than hierarchical command structures. Kethvar found himself deeply impressed despite his reservations. But how do you maintain unity of purpose without central control? Shared values, Admiral. Humans are remarkably good at working together when we agree on fundamental principles. And right now, every human on that planet agrees on one principle. We will adapt to whatever situation we face and find a way to thrive. Morrison activated another control, and the display showed detailed statistics from the recovery efforts. In the 12 hours since our conversation began, human emergency response teams have restored power to 89% of Earth's population centers, established medical care for 94% of casualties from the orbital bombardment, and re-established global communications networks using improvised equipment and salvage components from your own invasion force. The room fell silent as the Zephyrian officers processed this information. You're telling me, Kethvar said slowly, that humanity is more effective in defeat than most Imperial species are in peacetime. I'm telling you that humans don't recognize the concept of defeat, Admiral. We recognize setbacks, challenges, learning opportunities. But defeat? That implies giving up, and humans are remarkably poor at giving up. Morrison walked back to the center of the chamber, which brings us to the long-term strategic implications of this partnership. Your empire faces several critical challenges that threaten its stability. Resource depletion in core systems, increasing administrative costs, growing rebellion among conquered species, technological stagnation, and rising external threats from rival empires beyond your borders. The human diplomat activated a comprehensive strategic analysis that filled the main display. Human analysts have identified solutions to each of these problems, but Implementing those solutions requires fundamental changes to imperial doctrine. Changes at your species' cultural programming makes extremely difficult to accept. Morrison paused and looked directly at Admiral Kethvar. But humans don't have those cultural limitations, Admiral. We excel at paradigm shifts. We're comfortable with fundamental change because adaptation is our primary survival strategy. Partner with humanity, and your empire gains access to the most flexible, innovative, and persistently resilient problem-solving capacity in the known galaxy. The Admiral studied the strategic analysis with growing comprehension. The human solutions were elegant, efficient, and completely unlike anything in standard Imperial doctrine. And if the Empire rejects this partnership, Morrison's expression remained calm, but his eyes grew cold. Then, Admiral, you'll discover exactly how many critical Imperial systems now depend on human design improvements that have been quietly implemented over the past 3 years. And you'll learn what happens when the most adaptive species in the galaxy decides that cooperation is no longer possible. The human diplomat held up his dead man's switch again. Rule number 1, Admiral. Never assume humans can't do something just because they haven't done it yet. The conference chamber aboard the Dominion's Edge had fallen into intense silence. Admiral Kethvar's command staff waited nervously as their superior processed the strategic implications of everything Morrison had revealed. The human diplomat remained calmly seated, occasionally glancing at the device in his palm as if checking the time. Finally, Kethvar spoke. I need to consult with the Imperial High Command before making any decisions regarding your proposal. Morrison nodded. Of course, Admiral. However, I should mention that time is a factor here. Explain. The human stood and walked to the tactical display, bringing up a new set of data streams. The modifications we've implemented across Imperial systems aren't permanent in their current form. They're designed to demonstrate capability, not to cause lasting damage. However, if they're not properly integrated into Imperial protocols within the next 48 hours, they'll begin to degrade. Morrison manipulated the display to show projected timeline analyses. Your reactor core improvements will revert to baseline efficiency levels. Communication enhancements will expire. Logistics optimizations will shut down. Navigation improvements will reset to factory defaults. In essence, all the advantages we've provided will disappear, leaving Imperial systems slightly less functional than they were before we arrived. Kethvar's engineering officer looked alarmed. Sir, if these improvements revert while we're in the middle of hyperspace operations or critical system maintenance, there won't be any catastrophic failures, Morrison assured her. We're not interested in causing unnecessary destruction, but the transition period will be inconvenient. Fleets will need to return to port for system recalibration. Trade networks will experience significant delays. Administrative functions will operate at reduced efficiency until your technicians can manually restore baseline functionality. The Admiral's mandibles clicked in frustration. You're forcing our hand. I'm creating a demonstration window, Admiral. 48 hours for your command structure to experience firsthand what partnership with humanity can accomplish. After that, you can make an informed decision about whether such partnership serves Imperial interests. Morrison returned to his seat. However, I should also mention that this conversation is being observed by parties beyond this ship. Every Zephyrian in the chamber tensed. Kethvar's tactical officer immediately began scanning for surveillance equipment or unauthorized transmissions. You won't find anything, Lieutenant, Morrison said calmly. The observation isn't technological. The human diplomat activated his communication device again and spoke briefly in English. Moments later, the chamber's communication array activated with an incoming transmission. Admiral Kethvar, came a new voice speaking perfect Galactic standard. This is Dr. Sarah Chun, calling from the Imperial Research Station at Kepler, 442b. Kethvar's primary eyes widened in shock. Kepler, 442b was deep in Imperial core territory, nearly 300 light-years from Earth. How is this possible? Dr. Chun is one of approximately 15,000 humans currently working within Imperial territory, Morrison explained. They've been integrated into Imperial society for the past 3 years, serving as researchers, technicians, analysts, and specialists in various fields. The transmission continued. Admiral, I'm currently leading a research team that has just achieved a breakthrough in hyperspace efficiency technology. We've successfully tested engine modifications that can reduce hyperspace transit times by 60% while decreasing fuel consumption by 40%. Morrison activated the display to show technical schematics transmitted from the research station. Dr. Chin's team has also developed improvements to Imperial shield technology, medical procedures, and industrial processes. Similar human research teams throughout the Empire have made comparable breakthroughs in their respective fields. Kethvar stared at the technical data with a mixture of amazement and concern. These humans have been working within our most secure facilities for 3 years, and we never suspected. Admiral, came another transmission, this time from a different location. This is Dr. Marcus Webb at the Imperial Naval Academy on Centauri Prime. My colleagues and I have been analyzing Imperial military doctrine and have identified several strategic improvements that could increase fleet effectiveness by 200% while reducing logistical requirements by 30%. Morrison gestured to the display as more technical specifications appeared. Dr. Webb is one of 47 human military analysts currently embedded within Imperial command structures. They've been studying Imperial tactics, strategy, and operations while contributing to various research projects. The human diplomat stood and began pacing slowly around the chamber. You see, Admiral, when Earth's governments realized that conquest by your empire was inevitable, we didn't simply prepare for resistance. We prepared for integration. For 3 years, our best minds have been studying Imperial society from within, identifying opportunities for contribution while gathering intelligence about Imperial capabilities and limitations. Another transmission activated. Admiral, this is Dr. Yuki Tanaka at the Imperial Medical Center on New Alexandria. Human medical researchers have developed treatments for 17 diseases that currently affect Imperial populations. We've also created surgical techniques that can extend the average lifespan of Zephyrian citizens by 30%. Morrison paused in his pacing to face Kethvar directly. Every single human working within Imperial territory has been in constant communication with Earth throughout this entire process. They've shared their research, their observations, their insights. By the time your conquest fleet arrived here, humanity possessed a more comprehensive understanding of Imperial operations than most members of your own command structure. The Admiral's tactical officer looked up from his instruments with an expression of dawning comprehension. Sir, this means that human intelligence penetration of the Empire is total. They have assets in every critical system, every major facility, every important research program. Not assets, Lieutenant. Contributors, Morrison corrected. Every human working within Imperial territory is doing so voluntarily and openly. They're legitimate employees, researchers, and specialists who have been making genuine contributions to Imperial society. The intelligence gathering has been a secondary objective. Morrison activated a comprehensive display showing the scope of human integration across the Empire. 15,000 humans distributed across 2,847 Imperial facilities in 734 star systems. They represent less than 0.00001% of total Imperial population, but they're positioned at critical nodes throughout Imperial infrastructure. Research stations, manufacturing centers, administrative hubs, military academies, medical facilities. The human diplomat returned to his seat and looked directly at Admiral Kethvar. Admiral, I want to be completely transparent about humanity's strategic position. We cannot defeat the Galactic Empire through conventional warfare. Our industrial capacity, population, and territory are insufficient for sustained military resistance against an interstellar empire. Morrison paused, allowing this acknowledgement to register before continuing. However, we have achieved something that no other species in Imperial history has accomplished: total strategic integration without conquest. Every critical Imperial system now depends to some degree on human contributions. Every major Imperial research project has human participants. Every significant Imperial facility has human personnel. The human held up his dead man's switch device again. This device doesn't just control the modifications we've made to your ships, Admiral. It's connected to every human working within Imperial territory. If activated, It signals them to immediately cease all cooperation with Imperial activities and begin implementing contingency protocols that will effectively paralyze Imperial operations across hundreds of star systems. Kethvar felt his blood temperature drop. You're holding the entire Empire hostage. No, I've admitted. I'm demonstrating the difference between conquest and partnership. Conquest creates enemies who resist your authority and work to undermine your power. Partnership creates allies who strengthen your capabilities and expand your possibilities. Morrison stood and walked to the viewing window, showing Earth below. Humanity offers the Galactic Empire a choice, Admiral. You can continue to rule through force, maintaining control through fear and domination while your infrastructure gradually stagnates and your enemies grow stronger. Or you can embrace partnership with a species that excels at adaptation, innovation, and problem-solving. The human diplomat turned back to face the Zephyrian command staff. But understand this. The days of treating humanity as a conquered species are over. We've proven our value to the Empire. We've demonstrated our capabilities. We've established our indispensability. What happens next depends entirely on whether Imperial leadership is wise enough to recognize the opportunity before them. Morrison smiled his unsettling smile one final time. Rule number 1, Admiral. Never assume humans can't do something just because they haven't done it yet. 6 months had passed since the conference aboard the Dominion's Edge. Admiral Kethvar stood in his new office on Earth, looking out through reinforced windows at the bustling activity of what had once been Washington, D.C., but was now designated as the capital of the newly established Terra sector of the Galactic Empire. The transformation had been remarkable. Where orbital bombardment had left craters and ruins, gleaming towers now rose toward the sky. Human architectural techniques had been merged with Imperial construction technology to create structures that were both aesthetically pleasing and functionally superior to standard Imperial designs. The city below hummed with activity as humans and various Imperial species worked side by side. A soft chime announced an incoming visitor. James Morrison entered, no longer wearing the formal diplomatic attire from their first meeting. Instead, he wore the practical uniform of the newly formed Imperial Innovation Corps, with insignia indicating his rank as Senior Strategic Advisor. Admiral, Morrison said with a respectful nod. I have the quarterly efficiency reports from across the sector. Kethvar accepted the data tablet and reviewed the statistics with satisfaction. Remarkable. Industrial output is up 340% compared to pre-integration levels. Administrative efficiency has improved by 280%. Communication lag times have been reduced to an average of 4.7 minutes across the entire sector. Morrison smiled, but it was the warm expression of a colleague rather than the unsettling smile of an adversary. The human integration teams have been working around the clock to optimize every system they can access. But these results aren't just about human innovation, Admiral. They're about what happens when different species combine their strengths instead of simply dominating each other. The Admiral set down the tablet and walked to a large display screen that showed real-time data from across the Galactic Empire. The Imperial High Command has been impressed with our results here. Sector efficiency improvements of this magnitude haven't been achieved anywhere else in Imperial history. Morrison joined him at the display, and the other sectors are beginning to request human advisory teams. 17 sectors have formally requested human specialists, Kethvar confirmed. The Rigel sector has specifically asked for human logistics experts to address their ongoing supply chain problems. The Vega sector wants human medical researchers to help combat a plague that's been affecting 3 different species. The Centauri sector has requested human communications specialists to resolve coordination difficulties across their multi-system defensive grid. The human advisor nodded thoughtfully. We'll need to be careful about expansion rates. We don't want to overextend our people or compromise the quality of their contributions. Every human specialist who goes to work in Imperial territory represents years of training and preparation. Morrison activated a section of the display that showed deployment schedules and training programs. Currently, we have 4,200 humans in active training for Imperial integration assignments. Another 8,900 are in preliminary preparation programs. At our current graduation rate, we can sustainably deploy about 500 new specialists per year while maintaining quality standards. Kethvar studied the numbers with approval. More than sufficient for immediate needs. But I'm curious about something, Morrison. The human integration process has been so successful that I sometimes wonder if this was always the plan. Did your species deliberately allow the Empire to conquer Earth, knowing this would be the ultimate outcome? Morrison was quiet for a moment before responding. Admiral, I'll be honest with you. When we first detected Imperial scouts in our system 3 years ago, our initial response was pure panic. Humanity had barely achieved interstellar travel, and suddenly, we were facing an empire that spanned thousands of worlds. The human advisor walked to another section of the display, bringing up historical data from Earth's first contact period. Our governments immediately began preparing for military resistance. But our strategic analysts quickly determined that conventional warfare against the Empire would be suicide. That's when someone suggested a different approach. Morrison manipulated the display to show documentation from Earth's early strategic planning sessions. What if, instead of trying to defeat the Empire, we made ourselves indispensable to it? What if we could demonstrate such significant value that conquest would become partnership? The idea was considered impossible by most of our military leaders, but our civilian scientists and social theorists found it intriguing. Kethvar listened with growing fascination. So we developed a 2-track strategy, Morrison continued. Track 1 was conventional military resistance designed to delay Imperial conquest and provide intelligence about Imperial capabilities. Track 2 was rapid insertion of human observers into Imperial territory through trade missions, refugee programs, and diplomatic exchanges. The display showed the complex timeline of human activities during the 3-year pre-conquest period. The military resistance was real, Admiral. Humans died defending our world. But every battle, every engagement, every tactical decision was designed to serve the larger strategic objective of positioning humanity as a valuable partner rather than simply another conquered species. Morrison turned to face Kethvar directly. To answer your question, no, we didn't deliberately allow the Empire to conquer Earth. We couldn't have prevented it. But we made sure that when conquest came, we were prepared to turn it into opportunity. The Admiral nodded slowly. And now, humanity has what we always wanted: security, access to advanced technology, and the opportunity to contribute to something larger than ourselves. The Empire has gained something it didn't know it needed: a species specifically adapted for innovation and problem-solving. Morrison activated another display section showing long-term strategic projections. But more importantly, Admiral, this partnership has demonstrated a new model for Imperial expansion. Instead of simple conquest and subjugation, the Empire can now offer integration and mutual benefit. Species that would have resisted domination are beginning to request voluntary incorporation after seeing the benefits of the Terra Sector model. Kethvar examined the data with surprise. I wasn't aware that other species were making such requests. 14 species in the past 4 months, Admiral. 3 have been formally approved for preliminary integration discussions. The Empire is discovering that voluntary partners are far more valuable than conquered subjects. The human advisor brought up a comprehensive analysis of Imperial territorial expansion patterns. Traditional conquest requires significant military resources to maintain control and suppress resistance. Integration requires minimal enforcement resources while generating substantially higher economic and strategic returns. From a pure efficiency standpoint, partnership is superior to domination in almost every measurable category. Morrison paused and smiled. Of course, this approach only works with species that have something valuable to offer. Humanity's advantage is our adaptability and innovation capacity. Other species will need to demonstrate their own unique contributions. Kethvar considered this carefully. Are you suggesting that the Empire's entire expansion model should change? I'm suggesting that the Empire now has options, Admiral. Traditional conquest will remain necessary for hostile species or those that lack significant strategic value. But for species with valuable capabilities, integration offers superior long-term results. Morrison activated one final display showing projected Imperial development over the next century. Partnership-based expansion could allow the empire to double its effective territory while reducing military costs by 40% and increasing overall productivity by 500%. The mathematics are compelling. The admiral studied the projections with growing excitement. These numbers, if they're accurate, the empire could achieve unprecedented expansion while actually reducing resource expenditure. They're conservative estimates, Admiral, based on observed efficiency improvements from human integration and similar projections for other species with complementary capabilities. Morrison returned to the center of the room and faced Kethvar directly. Admiral, 6 months ago, you conquered Earth expecting to gain another source of raw materials and manual labor. Instead, you've gained partners who have revolutionized Imperial operations in ways that benefit everyone involved. Humans are safer and more prosperous as part of the Empire than we ever were as an independent species. The Empire is more efficient and capable than it was before human integration. The human advisor extended his hand in the traditional human gesture of partnership. That's what happens when you remember rule number 1, Admiral. Never assume humans can't do something just because they haven't done it yet. Kethvar looked at the extended hand for a moment, then reached out with his primary arm and grasped it firmly. Around them, through the large windows, the city that had once been the capital of an independent human civilization continued its transformation into the thriving heart of a new kind of imperial sector. In the distance, ships from a dozen different species landed and departed from the expanded spaceport, carrying human advisors to assignments across the galaxy and returning with reports of successful integrations, improved efficiencies, and new opportunities for partnership. The Galactic Empire had indeed won its war against humanity. But in victory, it had discovered something far more valuable than conquest: the possibility of true collaboration between species and the unlimited potential that came from embracing differences rather than simply dominating them. As Morrison had promised, humans had proven exceptionally good at finding solutions that others considered impossible. And the solution they had found to the problem of imperial conquest was not resistance, but transformation of the very meaning of what it meant to be part of an interstellar empire. Rule number 1 had proven true once again.